I need to. Perfect. Good morning, everyone, and happy Wednesday. Let's give everyone a minute to join before we begin today. As you're waiting, feel free to add where you're joining from in the chat box on the right. Awesome. We have Sami from Channel Islands. Oh, Jersey Channel Islands. We have Muhammad from Nigeria. We have people from Memphis, Tennessee, Napa, California, Ontario, Canada. That's a wide variety of people. And then we have Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas, Columbus, Ohio. That's awesome. Cool. Let's go ahead and get things started here. Firstly, thank you everyone for joining us today for our Fieldwire Basics webinar on how to set up your projects. My name is Pranati Gumpa and I'm a marketing program manager here at Fieldwire. Before we begin, I would like to address a few housekeeping items. To ensure a smooth session, all the attendees are muted, but feel free to ask any questions that you have in the like the chat panel, the same place where you're typing where you have come from. We will have a Q&A session at the end of this presentation, and we will do our best to address as many questions as we can. The session is also being recorded, so and you'll all be sent a copy of the recording and the presentation at the end of the session. So in case if you want to go back and revisit any part of this conversation, you can do so. Again, we also have some poll questions during the webinar for you to participate in. And please feel free to select the answers when these questions pop up. And additionally, we have a short 5-question survey at the end of the webinar. We would really appreciate it if you can take a couple of minutes at the end of the webinar and fill in the survey. It just helps us to understand the validity of this webinar and also plan for the future content that we can deliver. So, before we go into the actual webinar and introduce you to our hosts today, let's do this first poll question. Just want to understand what type of company do you work for? Architect, engineer, consultant, GCs, subs, other. Again, if you are saying other, I would love to hear what is the other in the chat box, just so that we know and we plan our content to cater to all kinds of companies. Let's give it a minute. Perfect. Thank you so much for answering that question. I have another poll question as well, which is what's your role at your company? Project manager, project coordinator, project engineer, super foreman, project executive. Again, if you're saying other, I would love to hear what exactly the other means in the chat box. Looks like we have a pretty good mix of project coordinator, engineer, project managers, and even our super foremans. And I see there are quality managers, construction administrators. That's awesome. Awesome. Let's go back to our presentation. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Macy Salerno. Hey, Macy.
Awesome. Thanks, Pranathi. Hi, everyone. I'm Macy. I am an SMB Construction Success Manager here at Fieldwire. So before working at Fieldwire, I worked for a large general contractor for a few years in the Southern California area before moving over to construction tech. So now I use my industry experience just to help clients understand how to utilize the software the best, get the most value out of it, whether that be through trainings or just walking through workflows and kind of everything in between. So before we kind of jump into the demo, we have Stephen joining us as well. So I will let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Macy. My name's Stephen Thomas. I'm a product manager here at Fieldwire. And my role is basically to work with our customers, try to understand their needs and problems, and then translate that into new features that we want to build or things we want to change in the Fieldwire product. So I work really closely with our team of designers and engineers to get those new features and upgrades built. Um, like Macy, I also came from the construction industry, so worked for a few years for a large Canadian GC bird construction on some industrial and commercial projects, and then spent some time in the same role as Macy as a construction solutions engineer at Fieldwire. So thanks everyone for joining. Really excited to be here, and I'll just be kind of shadowing and available to answer any questions that come up.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. So jumping into the agenda for today, we'll start just for a general overview of what Fieldwire is, especially for those of you that are new here. And then we'll jump into a live demo. Today, we're going to be covering kind of project setup, how to get started with Fieldwire, and kind of back to the basics. And then we'll wrap things up with a Q&A session. So for those of you that are new, I'll start off with just a generic overview of what Fieldwire is. So Fieldwire is a construction management software that is created to streamline communication. It's created to connect the field to the office, help with task tracking, and overall just improve project execution. The software was created to be super simple, very easy to use for both the field and the office. So with that, we'll kind of jump into the actual demonstration for today. So before we kind of run through, a specific project or any setup processes, I do want to just give an overview of Fieldwire's homepage. So what you see here is going to be all of our different projects that I am able to track in Fieldwire. Each tile is going to be a unique project that is getting tracked. So let's go ahead and jump into one specific project. And before we kind of set up any, standard processes or create a project together, I just want to run through some of the features that Fieldwire offers and kind of some of the settings that we can set up. So on the left-hand side of my screen, you can see this is going to be all of the different features and modules that Fieldwire does offer. There's obviously a lot of different examples and different modules that we offer. So for the time's sake, I'll touch on some of the key features as well as some of those features that we can standardize and kind of utilize. And I'll touch on that in a little bit. So starting with our plans, Fieldwire does offer you to store your contract drawings in the software. You can upload any PDF to the software, and automatically our OCR scanner will order these drawings for you in alphanumerical order. With that being said, if you do want to have your own organization, if you want to kind of build out your own folder structure, things like that, you have the option to build out your own custom folders on the software. So again, this will be alphanumerical, but it is a way to help group drawings together, help organization, and things like that. With that being said, I'll go ahead and kind of continue down the list. Next, we'll jump into our tasks. So within Fieldwire, before I kind of jump into all of the settings and the setup process of tasks, I'll just give a quick overview of kind of what a task is. So you can think of a task as any to-do item that you're able to track on a project. So obviously this can mean a lot of different things for different teams. So to help kind of organize and create a standard workflow on your project, we have what we call statuses, which is these different columns that you see at the top of my screen. These statuses are fully customizable. So if you want to build out your own unique workflow, you can have up to 20 of these and kind of build out kind of start to finish on a project to help understand your workflows. Some examples that we've seen successful clients utilize is tracking priorities, using task statuses to track trades or disciplines, or even just start to finish progress or punch items on a project. Within the task itself, kind of jumping into the meat and potatoes here. So there's a lot of different information you can include in a task. As you can see, there's a lot of details. You can add documents, pictures, messages, things like that. What I want to focus on today is going to be this checklist that you see at the top of the screen. So for a lot of different teams or companies, there's a lot of processes that do get replicated when to-do items come up. So this might be pre-pour checklists, site walks, inspections, things like that. So we'll touch on it in a little bit, how you can kind of streamline this and create this to be standardized throughout your projects. But I just wanted to kind of show you where this is at and how these tasks or checklists are used on a project. So continuing down the line, the next thing I want to touch on is going to be our files. So within files, you can basically build out any folder structure, any specific documents. Basically, you can think of this as an extension of your computer server where you're able to store any project related information. This can be safety data, this can be product data, kind of anything that is relevant that you would like individuals on your project to be able to have access to while they're in the field. The last thing that I want to touch on is going to be our forms. So within Fieldwire, you can think of forms as any paperwork that you are filling out on a day-to-day basis. So that can be, safety forms, inspection sheets, dailies, JHAs, toolbox, anything that you really think of in between. So off the bat, you can see there's 5 existing templates on this project. These are 5 templates that Fieldwire gives you day one, just as a starting point for you to start utilizing on your projects. If you would like to create your own custom form, if you would like to upload an existing fillable PDF, kind of build out anything from scratch, you do have that as an option and you can always create something on your own. Again, we'll touch on this in a little bit, but obviously with that being said, sometimes forms get replicated or utilized on several different projects. So we'll touch on how you can create this and streamline that process across all of your projects. Lastly, before we actually build out a project together, I do want to touch on a few settings. So starting with our People's tab, this is where you're going to be able to invite any individual to your project. Anyone that is invited to the project will have access to view, edit, and annotate information in the project, kind of depending on permission levels as far as the extent of the capabilities there go. And then lastly, it's going to be our settings gear. So this won't have, we won't focus too much on this right now, but this is something we're going to come back to a little bit later on this call. So I do want to offer, familiarity and get your eyes on this so it makes a little bit more sense in a little bit. So with that being said, I do just want to kind of wrap things up, go back to our homepage, and I'm going to pause before we actually create a new project from scratch now that we've kind of ran through those features. And I want to open a poll question to everyone that's attending, just asking, how do you currently create new projects on Fieldwire? We have cloning or duplicating a project, starting from blank projects, kind of starting from scratch, or utilizing project templates. We'll give everyone just a minute before moving on. It looks like most people are creating project templates. We have a handful that are creating blank projects and some that are also cloning. Awesome. So it looks like most everyone is using project templates. I'm glad that I'm bringing this up since there is roughly, about a quarter of you guys that are cloning or duplicating projects. We are sunsetting this feature of cloning projects. So I'm happy that we get the chance today to talk through creating account templates and kind of an alternative way that you can replicate project information. You're just going to have a little bit more capability. So before that, we'll kind of walk through every way that we can create a project, starting from creating it from scratch. So in my homepage, you can see I have the option to create a new project. I'll go ahead and create that new project. I'll just name this sample project. You can give it a project code. This can be like a project number or anything else that you use to kind of track your project names. For now, I'll go ahead and just give it something generic. And again, I'm going to start with the blank project. As mentioned in that questionnaire, you can clone an existing project. What that's going to do is basically replicate the existing settings for any project that you've already created. But again, this is sunsetting, so it is a good time to kind of bring up the two alternative situations. So for now, I'll create a blank project and go ahead and click create. So right off the bat, you can see it's going to look a lot like the project that we were just looking at. We have all of those same features living on the left-hand side of my screen, kind of depending on the subscription you have as far as how many features you have access to. With that, what is missing is a lot of those settings that we were just looking at. So those plan folders aren't necessarily here. My tasks aren't built out in any specific workflow. My files, it's empty. There's not any existing documents or any folders, so on and so forth. So with that being said, obviously you can create a project from scratch and kind of manually build out all of the settings that we just took a look at. But an alternative option is to actually create what we call project templates. So project templates will be accessible to every subscription tier, Pro, Business, or Business Plus. I'm going to go ahead and actually show you where you can access this so you can start standardizing some of your project processes. So jumping over into my templates page on my home dashboard, there's going to be 4 templates that you're able to create on Fieldwire. It's going to be our project templates, which is kind of what we've been talking about, making sure your settings are set up, having, your folder structures, your task workflows, kind of anything that might be replicated across multiple projects. Next, we have our checklists. This is going to be those checklists that we were looking at earlier regarding task information. So this can be pre-pour checklists, inspections, any sort of site walk, anything that might be reoccurring across multiple to-do items. You can create standard on an account level so you can easily bring those into your tasks and not reinvent the wheel each task that gets created. Next, we have our account form templates. So this is going to be any of those custom forms that you do build out on your own. This can be inclusive of those 5 templates Fieldwire gives you as a starting point, any customizations you make to those, as well as any fillable PDF or just blank from scratch form that you build out. So if you wouldn't like to rebuild the forms every single project and you just want to build it up front once, and then you can pull that into your projects at a later time, you can build it out on this account template. Lastly, we're going to take a look at our account lists. This is going to be any drop-down list that you can include in your account forms. So for an example, let's say I have a generic question on my form that says, were there any scheduled delays today? What you might have as an option is yes, no, or NA. Your account list gives you the option to create that as a reoccurring list so you don't have to recreate a drop-down list every single question, but you can kind of have some existing that you can easily pull into your forms. For today, we really will only focus on project templates. So before we kind of build out a template from scratch, just like we did with the project, I'll go ahead and jump into an existing template. We can take a look at all of the features and the capabilities there, and then we can build something out from scratch. So again, there's a lot of different capabilities here, tons of settings you can utilize. So for the time's sake, I'm only going to focus on some of those settings that we already took a look at when we were looking at the project earlier. Starting from the top and just working our way down, you can see you can set some generic settings such as specific company info, working schedule, things like that, as well as your different notifications. Jumping into our task group, the 2 things I want to focus on is those checklists. Again, these can be brought into your tasks, kind of any to-do items that you're utilizing to track on these to-do items. Can be pre-pour checklists, any site walks, things like that. We also have a way to standardize your statuses. So if there's ever a workflow that is reoccurring or repeated on projects, any progress, things like that, you can kind of streamline that in this location. Additionally, we have our plan folders. This is going to be a way to build out those different groupings we took a look at, whether it be different types of drawings, different trades that are responsible, so on and so forth. Working our way down, the next item I want to call out is our forms. Again, this is where you can bring in any of those account forms that you build out. Toolbox talks, safety inspections, JHAs, whatever it might be. Next, we have our files. So this is where you can bring in any folder structure you want to pre-build or any existing documents. So again, product data, any safety protocol, any sort of documents that might be helpful for people to have access to on any project. Lastly, I do want to touch on our People tab. So this is a way that you can actually pre-include individuals on a project so that when you do create a project from a template, automatically these individuals will be invited. So you don't have to manually invite people each project. You know exactly who's going to have access. You don't have to kind of worry about that on the back end. So obviously there's a lot of capabilities here. There's a lot more details, there's a lot more customization that you can build out, but ultimately the goal with our templates is to streamline the setup process of a project and shortcut kind of what that setup process looks like, and ensure you're saving time focusing on what really needs to get done, which is the work and not so much the settings. So now that we've built out and kind of looked at a project template together, I'm going to open it up to the chat again for a poll question. This time, before we build out a template ourselves, I just want to know, do you utilize similar workflows across multiple projects? So far, sometimes, mostly yes. We got a couple that say no, not really. I'll give it just a couple more seconds. Awesome. So it looks like the majority of people attending this call today, they do repeat, you guys are recycling some workflows. This is super common. Again, that's kind of the goal of creating these project templates. So since a lot of you do utilize, or at least sometimes recycle workflows, let's go ahead and walk through how we can create these project templates so you can start using these on your Fieldwire accounts. So very similar to creating a new project, I'm going to go ahead and create a new template, selecting this button at the top of the screen. Here's where you can select which template you want to build out, kind of the four we walked through earlier. For now, I'm going to just select a new project template. I'll go ahead and give it a name. You can build out as many project templates as you want. So if there's, a specific workflow you want to recycle and, you want to create different project templates, that's always an option. I'll go ahead and create a sample template. Here's where you can kind of have a similar capability of cloning a project. So you can either start from scratch or you can copy an existing project settings if you already, like the way that you built something out. For this instance, we'll just kind of start from scratch and build it out from a blank project. So this is where you can see it looks very similar to what we were just looking at, looks very similar to your own individual project settings we looked at the beginning of this call. For now, I'm going to go ahead and just run through those features we just talked about and kind of show you how you can actually add some of those features. So starting with our task information. If I want to manage my checklists, I can easily import them from my account, select any checklist that I already pre-built, and import them to my project templates, and it's already included. Next, we do have a way to also manage our statuses. Again, this is any workflow you want to build out, whether it's tracking your priorities, start to finish progress, punch list items, you name it. So I'll go ahead and say scheduled, and then we have in progress, and then I'll wrap things up with an inspection. Again, you have up to 20 of these statuses, so you can get really detailed and granular with the workflows that you do build out. Next, we have our plan folders. Again, this will be broken out in alphanumerical order, so I'm going to go ahead and start with civil and then work my way down. I'll create another for mechanical. Perfect. Not limited to any sort of file or folder plans, so feel free to build out as detailed of a folder structure as you would like. Next, we have our form templates, very similar to our checklist. I can go ahead and just pull in any forms that I did already build out on the account level. So I'll go ahead and import those. You can see I've selected 4 and those are already existing, so that's finished. Lastly, we have our files and our people. So I'll go ahead, I can build out any new file structure. You can drag and drop any files that are already existing on your computer, or you can build out any folder structure you would like. So if I want any safety documents, and then I can manage the access. With this, I do really quickly want to touch on our user permissions. So I'll lead into our People's tab, which we can dive into our project permissions. So here's where I'm able to invite any users that I want to automatically be invited to my project. For this instance, I'll just invite Pranathi to this project, so she's invited from this template. Here's where we have our different project roles. So we did already touch on those account permissions. I do want to touch on different project roles that we do offer. So we have our admin, our members, and our followers. This means that any admin will be able to have full transparency into all of the project. They'll be able to see, anything that anyone creates, whether it's specifically assigned to them or not. They'll also be able to remove any information or add any information. Project member, you can think of as more so any field personnel, superintendents, individuals that might need a little bit more restriction as far as permission goes. So they can still see a lot of information, they can view what others are doing, but they can't necessarily remove information. Lastly, we have our followers. Typically, this is who we see being any external users. So what I mean by that is subcontractors, architects, owners, anyone that's not an internal team member that you would like to have access. You can assign information out to them, but they won't be able to see anything that's not explicitly assigned to them. So I'll go ahead and add Pranathi. And with that, I will jump back to our templates homepage. Before we jump into the specific kind of building out, creating a new project from the template we created, I do want to touch on an account permission level. So we just touched on the project permissions. This is going to be any specific project permission that you can kind of customize across all of your different projects. As far as the account level goes, we have 3 main account tiers. It's going to be your account manager, account user, and project user. So on the account level, an account manager can create a new project. They can view, access, and edit projects that they are invited to, as well as projects that they're not explicitly invited to. So you can think of them as having full transparency and full ability to manage any project on the account. An account user is going to be able to view, access, and edit any project that is on their account specifically or that they're invited to. But if they are not explicitly invited to the project, they will not be able to view that information. However, any project they do create will be financially covered by the account owner. The last tier we have is our project user. This is going to be individuals that can view, access, and edit projects that they are invited to only. When they do create their own projects, it won't be covered by the account level, so they won't necessarily get access to all of the features unless they decide to finance and pay for their own subscription. So now that we kind of ran through all of the different tiers, all of the different subscription levels, let's go ahead and actually build out a new project utilizing that template that we just created. So similar to before, I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. I'll give this a template sample name. Again, give it a project code if you would like. I'll stop here though. Instead of creating a blank project from scratch like we originally did, I'm going to go ahead and actually pull in an existing project template. So this is the project template we looked at when we first jumped over to project templates. I'm going to utilize that since it's familiar and we can create a project from here. So what you're going to notice that's different from the project we created from scratch at the beginning of this call is that all of the settings are going to be pre-existing. So you can see my task statuses, scheduled, in progress, T&M. Those are built out as opposed to just a generic workflow. It's catered to my team. Next, we have our files. Here's any pre-existing folder structure or existing documents that I want my team to have access to from day one. Next, we have any specific forms. If you want to start utilizing these forms, I've had that pre-existing. And lastly, here's those plan folders that I built out. Now all I need to do is actually upload my plans and start associating them into the specific folders. So, with that being said, that kind of wraps up everything that wanted to touch on today as far as creating a project, utilizing our templates, and running through those different project permission levels. So, I'll go ahead and jump back over and we can open it up to our Q&A session.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Macy, for going over this whole workflow. And let's open it up for Q&A here. If you have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat down there. And we will be sharing a recording of this session in case you want to visit any parts of this presentation. And it'll be an email to the same email ID from where you've signed up from. We'll also put it on our YouTube channel. So in case you just want to not go through the email, feel free to just Google the project, the webinar name and /YouTube or whatever, Fieldwire YouTube, and it should show up there as well. Awesome. Let's go ahead and kick the questions on. The first question that we have is, does project followers require a paid Fieldwire seat? Macy, do you want to take this?
Yep. So a project follower will require a paid Fieldwire seat. We don't necessarily offer a view-only subscription that is unpaid. Because of that, followers can still access tasks. They can still document information, fill out forms, things like that. So since they do have full editing capabilities, it does require a paid license. With that, a lot of the information is still exportable. If you ever need to send task data or anything like that, you can always generate that as a PDF if you would like to send that to any external individual.
Perfect. Thank you, Macy. Stephen, the next question is for you. Are templates available by default in the software or do you want to just talk about the different levels where the templates are available?
Yeah, great question. So project templates are going to be available for any paid subscription tier. So that's Pro, Business, and Business Plus. Previously, they were only available on Business and Business Plus, but just a few months ago, we rolled project templates out to Pro customers as well. Account checklists are the only other template type available on Pro. Form templates and account lists are Business and Business Plus only.
Awesome. Thank you. Stephen, this next question is also for you. I used to use cloning, but what are the advantages of using project templates over the cloning?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it's something we thought about a lot when we were developing project templates and making the decision to sunset cloning. So there's a few different advantages from my perspective. One is just discoverability and usability. With cloning, our customers had to figure out to create a project that they want to effectively make a de facto template and copy. It's a little bit hard to figure out that process. We found it wasn't super intuitive for a lot of people. And then once they set up their project that they want to clone from, when creating a new project, they had to scroll through a long list of all their projects to try and find it. And we found a lot of the time somebody on an account might set up a project to clone from, but other people on their account wouldn't know which one to use. So with project templates, that list is just a lot easier when you're creating a new project. And the other advantage there is when you create a project template, anybody on your account can use it right away to start creating projects from. With cloning, if you wanted somebody to be able to clone a project, you'd have to remember to go in and add them to it, which was kind of a pain, especially on larger accounts where there's a lot of turnover in staff and they're constantly hiring new people. It's just difficult to remember and standardize processes. Some other advantages, we're continuing to develop project templates. So we're adding new features to it that aren't available on cloning. So if you're on the Business Plus tier, there's some specific settings for submittals and change orders that you can set up and manage on templates that don't copy over when you clone projects. For the business tier, we've also added files. So if you have any standard safety documentation, any standard submittals, for example, that you want to add to your files tab and have them be on all your projects, you can easily set that up in project templates. That was a big request we got. So we're just continuing to develop project templates even further, and there's some features on it not available on cloning. And then lastly, it just works. It's a little bit easier to maintain. So, for example, if you update an account checklist or an account form template because you've changed your processes a little bit, those updates will automatically propagate to any project template that uses those forms or account checklists. Whereas before with cloning, you'd have to remember to go to all your kind of template projects that you want to clone from and manually make those same updates to any checklist or form templates. So just a little bit easier on the maintenance side and overall just a little bit easier to use and more intuitive is what we found.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steven. The next question is, what should we do if an email to a certain project gets flagged? I'm assuming this is, or what could be the reason why it's flagged? I'm assuming it's like the red sign that comes next to the user's email. Um, that's generally because, and note that this email is added to a paid account. That's generally like the flagging of an email only happens because the email is incorrect, right? Steven, do you have any insights on that?
Not offhand. I think I'd have to look into that one a bit further and get back after the webinar here.
Yeah, we'll get back to you on that after the webinar. If a user is deleted or email address is updated, will we lose the notes, photos, etc. that they have uploaded? Do either of you want to take that?
Yeah, I can take that. So essentially, if a user changes or their email changes, no data will be lost on Fieldwire's end. Even if a user leaves, if an email changes, whatever it might be, anything that they added or edited in Fieldwire will still remain as a part of the project. Just going forward, it'll obviously just change with the new user that is now taking up that license essentially.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Macy. The next question we have is, can you clone a project and rename it a different job name? Like, can you rename a project after you clone it?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can create as many projects as you would like, renaming them. You can use the same template, or as of right now, you can clone the same project. But with each project, it'll require you to insert a new name. So basically, you can utilize the same clone or the same template, standardize that, but have unique names. So it can obviously be tracking different projects.
Awesome. And just coming back to the cloning of a project, as Macy mentioned before, we are sunsetting the cloning feature. So if you're already using cloning, or if you create your projects using cloning, it would be a good time to use project templates. Just the way Macy showed today, you can use those existing projects to create a project template and use creating a project from project template going forward. The next question we have here is probably Steven, you can take this. Is it possible to move existing projects to a new template?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely. And you can do that pretty quickly and easily. So, if you go through that flow Macy was showing for creating a new project template, one of the options there is to copy an existing project. So, you just find that existing project that you want to convert into a template and then hit create new template, and it'll copy over like any settings on that project that can be modified on a template. It'll copy those over, and you'll have your project template set up. So for anybody using that's cloning a project right now that wants to move over to project templates, you just find that project that you want to clone and follow that flow to copy it into a template. And it really should just take a couple steps, a couple clicks, and you'll be able to create a project template.
Perfect. Macy, can you just like maybe quickly show how to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So jumping back in kind of the homepage, if I jump into those templates and I want to create a new project template, but I want to utilize kind of the settings of an existing project, I'll go ahead and give it a name. And then this is where you can either start from scratch or you can copy over an existing project. So let me go ahead and copy over this example test project. I'll continue to the setup process. Basically, it's just going to ask you to verify that everything looks good. You want to copy over everything. Let's say there's one specific thing you don't want copied over. You can fully customize that. It's then just going to ask you if you want to publish this to the account. You're going to check that yes, and then you can click create. From there, this is where you're going to be able to see kind of everything that you've created can already, be shown. So I didn't have to recreate this workflow, but it's already existing because I basically copied it over from an existing project.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Macy.
Yeah.
The next question, maybe you can take this, Macy. Can I move a project from account projects to also show in my projects?
Yeah, great question. So, in order to get a project, if you are an account user over from an account project to my projects, you will have to be explicitly invited. So, those projects automatically shift into the My Projects tab when you become a project user to it. So, as long as you're invited to that project and you get invited and you accept that invite, then that will fall under the My Projects bucket as opposed to the account projects bucket.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Um, yes, we will be creating a tutorial video on the project templates as well, in case later on, which would be on our YouTube channel, in case you want to use a tutorial video. But always you can come back and refer to this video as well as you are creating the templates. And we do have a knowledge base article, which also goes step by step on how you can create these templates onto your accounts. The next question, how do we save a template as a new project?
Yeah.
That's actually, yeah, go ahead,
Oh, sorry.
Macy.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that is essentially kind of what we walked through in the last step. So, if I just kind of wanted to jump over, if I have this existing template that is created, if I jump into a project and I click create new project here, instead of starting with a blank project and building it out from scratch, the lower portion of this option will give me all of the different project templates I've built, so I can pull it from there. And from there, it's basically going to allow me to create a project utilizing those settings.
Awesome. Thank you for showing that, Macy. Stephen, this is again a continuation of one of the older questions that we've got is if they create an improved template, is there a way to migrate an existing project to the improved template?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. And something we get a fair bit of feedback for and requests from customers. But unfortunately, right now, that isn't possible. You'd have to go and manually update the settings on the existing project to match the changes you made on the template or create a new project. That said, we are currently working on a project to help with that a little bit. We're not looking at a way to let you do exactly what you're asking, like update an existing project with settings from a project template. But we are working on a feature that will let you push updates made to account form templates to existing projects using those form templates, which we found is one of the kind of major things people want to do when they're updating something on their account level and they want that to propagate to the projects. That's kind of the most time consuming setting to adjust on existing projects. So that's kind of our starting point for working on that and making it easier to kind of update those settings on existing projects.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that answer, Stephen. We are at time. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And thank you, Macy and Stephen, for one going through the presentation and also answering all the questions. For the questions that we did not get to today, I will reach out to you and reply back to them on an email. And we would really appreciate it if you can take a couple of minutes after this and fill in our survey. That will just like help us to create more content and more relatable content as we go ahead with the webinars. Have a great Wednesday, everyone. Again, take a couple of minutes to fill in the survey, and thank you so much.